So a couple days ago, I posted a guide on how to create a chessboard. If you saw that post, this may look somewhat familiar to you, but I wanted to go a step even further and see if I could actually get the pieces themselves onto the board. Can I get the black pieces up here in the correct spots? And can I get the white pieces down here in the correct spots? Well, spoiler alert, I was able to do that. And I'll give you a little demonstration here on what creative elements I decided to add in to actually appending these elements to the board. So I'll go ahead and hit begin and the elements will populate. So as you can see, we have our black pieces up here in the correct order, and we have our white pieces down here. So what did I actually do to get this all set up? Well, I'll show you. So if you saw my blog post before, you'll know that I have this function here called render squares. What this is responsible for is not rendering the pieces, but rendering the actual squares that they're on top of. So every single tile here is a separate div. And when I hit begin, these pieces are separate divs that are children of the squares themselves that are being appended onto those elements. So the way I did that is I have this chess square array here, which is being populated with 64 squares because of this function right here. And what we do is, or what I did, or what you can do, is create a function called create pieces. And we're going to pass this chess square array in it, which contains all 64 of our tiles, or squares. So the goal here is to get the black pieces up here and the white pieces down here. So how do we do that? Well, what I did is I have a while loop here, and I have two arrays, white pieces and black pieces. So within this while loop, because, well, first I should say, because we have 16 pieces of each color, we're going to want this while loop to run 16 times. And each time it's going to be pushing a piece into both of these array, white or black. So first things first, we have to define our elements and store it in a variable, add a class to it, and push it to our array. And then we can do the same thing for the black piece. And don't forget to increment your while loop unless you want your computer to blow up. And as you can see here, we have several different functions that we are calling within here. So we will take a look piece by piece. Determine chess piece by ID. So what this is responsible for doing is assigning an ID to a particular piece. So if we take a look at our, if we take a look at our arrays here in the console, we have both of our arrays. We can see our white pieces here. Each one has a particular index. I've set this up in a particular way. So the white pieces, the pawns come first, and then the more dynamic pieces come after that. And the reason I did it this way is because these tiles, this is the first element right here in the array. This is index 0, and this is index 63. And if I click on it, you can see the indexes that I'm clicking on, the indices. I don't know what the plural of index is. So based off of the index, what we're doing is we're mapping through each of these array white pieces, which we push the elements into. We map through, and for each element in each index, we're evaluating the value of that index. And depending on what it is, we're assigning it an ID. In this case, if it's less than 8, or in other words, elements 1 through 7, index 1 through 7, we are assigning it the ID of pawn. And the reason I did I plus 1 here instead of just I is because you don't want pawn 0, pawn 1, pawn 2, pawn, that can be a little confusing. So I did I plus 1, so you have pawn 1, pawn 2, pawn 3, pawn 4. And the reason this is even in here in the first place is so you don't have multiple pawns with the same ID. or multiple rooks with the same ID, or multiple knights with the same ID, so on and so forth. So we do this with the white pieces, we do this with the black pieces. And the reason we're doing this in the first place is so we can actually style these pieces. So if we go into our styles here, styles.css, move you back over here. We can see have our white pieces and we have our black pieces. So I am selecting each pawn in the same selector. So pawns 1 through 8, we're setting it to the background of white pawn.png. And the reason we don't have to specify white or black in the actual selectors themselves is because if we take a look, for the black pieces, the pawns are 9 through 16, and for white, pawns are 1 through 8. So you're not going to have any overlap there. So we have our pieces styled, as you can see. We've selected our pieces in our CSS, and we have given them a background image so the user can see the pieces that they are interacting with. But how did we actually get them onto the board? How did we get these divs onto the board? And moreover, how are we able to get the black pieces up here and the white pieces down here in the specific order? Well, if we come down here, render white pieces and render black pieces, what we're doing is we are passing in white pieces and our chess square array. So we have the elements that are the white pieces and the elements that are the tiles themselves. So I'm going to ignore this set timeout function for a second. I'm just going to focus on the map. What we're doing is we, on the click of a button, we are slicing at 48. What this does is for our white pieces, this map begins on this element right here. It begins on the 49th or the index of 48 element. So that's where the map begins, and then it'll just go to the end. And what we're doing is for each square, we're appending white piece at I. So in this case, white piece at I is going to be the pawn. And then we just do the same thing for the black pieces, except this time we're not starting at a point and just going to the end. We're starting at the beginning and ending at a specific point. So we're going to slice the original array, start at 0, end at 16. And then for each square, we're going to append the black piece at I. In this case, since we're starting with a rook, right? Because if we're going top to bottom, left to right, we're starting with a pawn for the white pieces. But if we're going top to bottom, left to right for black, it's going to start with a rook. So we want rook to be at the first index or the 0th index. And then just a little thing about this set timeout thing here. Basically what these functions do is create this staggered effect. We're calling set timeout and passing in a anonymous function, which performs this at an interval of every 50 milliseconds times I. And we're also waiting 800 milliseconds because if we come down here to the black pieces, we're waiting for the black pieces to finish their staggered effect. So once they finish their staggered effect, 800 milliseconds has passed and the white ones begin.